So we'll start this webinar on participatory evaluation for strategic learning. This webinar is the second of a monthly series on place-based initiatives featuring the diversity of experiences made in Quebec. We can go to the next slide, please. I would like to begin this webinar by acknowledging that we are meeting on Indigenous land. And as settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this land. I myself calling in today from the traditional territory of the Ghanaian-Gehaga Nation. Most specifically, I'm very grateful to live, work, and play in Jojage, colonially known as Montreal. And Montreal has historically been a gathering space for many First Nations. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. I invite you to take a moment to think about your own reconciliation work. We can move to the next, please. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Connor from the Tamarack Institute, who will be our tech support for today. So thank you, Connor. You have a few technical considerations for us.
Thanks, Miriam, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone joining us. Just a few points I want to cover today. So we've got you covered. After the webinar, we will be sending a full recording of this webinar, the slides, as well as a collection of links and resources provided by any of the speakers. We encourage you to please join the conversation. Use the Q&A panel and your chat box on the Zoom client to submit and vote for questions you'd like us to discuss in the question period, which will be in the latter portion of this webinar. And then finally, technical support. You can use the chat panel and you can directly message me, Connor Judge, or the Tamarack Institute, and I will gladly provide you support through the direct messaging platform. So once again, thanks everyone for joining us, and Miriam, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Connor. So I'll start by introducing myself and then moving on to our three speakers today. So my name is Myriam Berube, and I'm the Consulting Director for Quebec at the Tamarack Institute. And I'm very glad today to have with me three speakers from Quebec. Diana Orr is a community leader from the Centre-South neighborhood in Montreal. The CDC Centre-South is one of Montreal's 30 roundtables. For those of you who attended our last webinar on the wonderful work of roundtables in Montreal, roundtables convene local stakeholders around a common action plan to improve the living conditions of its residents, more specifically like the most vulnerable residents. We also have with us Mikhail Regorovsky, who is the strategic advisor and evaluation for Dynamo. Dynamo is a capacity building organization that has been working for many years alongside communities to support them to develop their capacity to collaborate, learn, and act together. And finally, my colleague Jean-Marie Chapeau is Consulting Director on Evaluating Impact at the Tamarack Institute. Jean-Marie has joined us recently. Prior to that, he's been pioneering the work of participatory evaluation in Quebec, and will share his experience with us today. So thank you very much to the three of you for being here, and I invite our participants to look at the landing page of the webinar to learn more and see the bios, the full bios of our speakers today. So just to warm us up a little bit, we can go to the next slide. I would like to start with just a short roundtable about what is important to you about participatory evaluation. Diana, would you like to start?
Yes. So what's important to me is that we do evaluation for ourselves and not for someone else. And based on this observation, it's important to remain consistent on what makes sense for the community to evaluate. And our process is oriented to understand the improvement and positive changes in the neighborhood rather than focusing on report and performance. And of course, it's also important to adapt the process that evolves accordingly to the rhythm of the stakeholders involved in it, and to share the results of the evaluation with them.
Thank you, Diana. Misha, would you like to go? What's important to you about participatory evaluation?
Yes, that notion of rhythm is very important. So what's important to me is to really take care of the group of passionate and curious stakeholders who decide to get directly involved in the evaluation, design, and implementation. And this relies in part in following their pace of collective work, but also by taking into account their individual aspirations and needs, because doing so goes a long way in building a trust relationship that will only promote their engagement during the process.
Thank you. Jean-Marie, what would you like to add?
In a nutshell, what is important to me is the empowerment and the capacity building dimension. So in the place-based participatory evaluation, the community evaluates, learns, but also learn how to learn.
Wonderful. Thank you for this. We can already see that you're enthusiastic and passionate about this participatory evaluation work. I'm eager to learn more from you. We will start with Diana. I will invite you, Diana. Can you share, next slide? Yeah, thank you. Can you share with us an example of a community-led evaluation process you are proud of? And what are some of the benefits? So can you tell us more about the Center South neighborhood story? On to you.
So the CDC Center South coordinates the neighborhood roundtable, which brings together local stakeholders to leverage our collective capacity to improve neighborhood conditions for all the residents. Center South is a district near downtown Montreal with around 30,000 inhabitants. It's a district historically popular, with a lot of social transformations through the years caused by the deindustrialization during the 50s and past and coming major urban planning transformation. The neighborhood roundtable has existed for 30 years now. So to come back to our local evaluation process, it's based on our neighborhood strategic planning that was defined collectively with the different partners who work on social development in the districts of Center South. So local health institutions, the city of Montreal, politicians, and of course, the nonprofit community organization that we represent. As the neighborhood roundtable who coordinates the place-based participatory evaluation, the CDC team guides and support this process, and the data are collected and analyzed with those local stakeholders. Involving them in the process allows to enrich our understanding of changes and mobilize them around the collective actions that aim to improve the living condition of the residents. Next, please. So as I was saying, to improve the neighborhood condition for the residents, we have adopted a 5-year strategic plan that help us to identify and prioritize collectively our local issues. And for the first time, our strategic plan was based on the theory of change and oriented around 4 main components: living conditions, food needs, work, education, and personal development, and community life. Next one, please. Each main component has targeted changes, the changes we want to reach for our district. For our district, we want the city Center South has a strong identity. The residents are proud to live here. Or another example, we wish to see the citizen participation at the center of our neighborhood work. Next one. To reach our targeted changes, we have defined a path that corresponds to short-term, medium-term, and long-term stages that's easier to reach our dream step by step. And next one, please. To make the road together to our destination, we have created few collective actions that contribute to create more fair, inclusive living conditions for our citizens. Our neighborhood nurturer, for example, works on creating a local food system for Santa South. There are 5 stakeholders for these collective actions. So 3 community organizations, the City of Montreal, and us, the CDC. Another example, the collective action movement KILT, sorry for all the translation, who works on taking ownership of our district history by creating unique encounters between residents and community organizations based in Centre South. So here there are 10 stakeholders, all community organization, and us who coordinates all the meetings. So the objectives of our evaluation process are exactly to look at how we are proceeding in those paths of changes. Next slide, please. So for that, we have divided our evaluation process in 3 phases with a specific element to target on each time, each year. So first, the collaboration changes. Second, the effects on the citizen. Third, the one we are in right now is the mechanism of changes. What make us move as a neighborhood, the accelerators and the obstacles. Next slide, please. So in the first phase of evaluation, we ask the stakeholders to write short stories allowing to relate one or significant changes experienced personally or through their organization. And then the partners went together to analyze the story as a group and collectively identify the changes that are more significant for them from the stories. Next slide, please. In the second phase of evaluation, we invited the residents who have participated in the collective action to describe, write, illustrate on a postcard the changes generated in their life. Then we collectively categorize the effects in order to identify the most significant changes. Next slide, please. And finally, for this last phase, we looked at our path of changes and asked the stakeholders to indicate where and how they thought the collective action were contributing and indicate the obstacles that they see on our path to reach our destination. And this time we used an online visual tool. Next slide, please. To conclude, it's very important for us to involve the stakeholders at different levels as subjects of the data collection, participating to the analysis, helping us to share the tools of data collection with the residents, but definitely they also have to be here when we present the results of the evaluation. So when we ended a phase, we organized an event, a celebration of our learnings. So the first time we did it in a bar, presenting the chains of collaboration to the neighborhood roundtable, and the second time online open to the resident. And the picture that you see here is my colleagues Marlies, who completely represent the mood, the energy, the vibe that we try to have, the good energy in our process or in our meeting and evaluation.
I was there, I can confirm.
And I wanted her to be with me today. Next slide, please. So sharing the results asks us to create transferable, easy to earn communication tools such as short one-pagers, synthesis, video, and poster, and to adapt an easy to understand language thanks to our communication manager, Sarah, who works a lot with us. So that's for me for what I'm proud of.
Thank you so much, Diana. This is such inspiring work. I really love the tools that they are so well designed, so colorful, the tools that you use to engage the community. I think we have a lot to learn from your experience. Thanks for sharing this with us. I'd like now to turn it to Misha. Misha, we know that learning to measure change at the community level, we have wonderful, inspiring examples, such as the one of Center South with that Diana just presented. But we know that learning to measure change at the community level is not an easy task. And Dynamo has been working on this for many years and learning from the process. So I'd like to invite you to tell us a few words first about your organization, Dynamo, and then my question for you is what kind of support is needed to make participatory evaluation happen and why? On to you, Misha.
Thank you. That was beautiful, Diana. Thank you. So next slide, please. So first and foremost, Dynamo is a social economy enterprise comprised of strategic advisors who believe in supporting and reinforcing collective and their collaboration processes so that they're able to create social change. And this is well reflected in our organization's mission. Next slide, please. Also, so in a nutshell, this citation reflects our evaluation approach. So what I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember, and what I do, I understand. Next slide, please. So under the project EvalPeak, we have supported 17 neighborhood roundtables in Montreal in implementation of co-design evaluation processes that are useful to the neighborhoods involved in the collective impact project. So what's important here is to understand that the desire to evaluate the impact needs to come from the roundtables themselves. And for this reason, we opted to put into place different strategies that aim to open doors and spark an interest in collectives for this practice. Among these strategies, well, there are those that are offered to all neighborhoods, such as trainings, communities of practice on evaluation, and those are offered more in an individual level to every neighborhood, such as coaching. What is also important to note is that that we've learned over time different practices to bring up the topic of community-led change, and we've arrived at a loop model that adapts to specific collective realities and distances itself from that classic idea of summative evaluation that collectives typically have, that idea that evaluation is only important for accountability purposes. The first part consists in identifying with them what is absolutely needed to know to move forward in your project. And at this stage, it is important for the facilitator to be a guardian of the process to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to co-design a game plan that feels manageable, for them to be able, that evaluation is doable and not necessarily something that's done from the outside by specialists, by researchers. So what we're aiming here is for everyone to be able to collect those low-hanging fruits in their participation along the process. So that idea of a looping model of evaluation allows us to show everyone that evaluation can happen as part of an ongoing conversation that is not only useful, but can also be pleasant and even fun.
It does look fun, actually. Misha, thank you very much for sharing these insights on capacity building. We can already see from both presentations, I think you've really set the stage for us to discuss some of the specificities of the evaluation approach in Quebec. So Jean-Marie, I'd like to invite you. I mean, you've been involved in designing, implementing, funding, participatory evaluation processes for more than 10 years in Quebec prior to joining Tamarack. Can you share with us what has shaped place-based participatory evaluation in Quebec and more specifically in Montreal?
Yes, Miriam, first, it is true to say that the community sector has reframed the conversation around evaluation in Quebec over the last, I would say, 15, 20 years. one of the factors that facilitated this movement was the emergence in the 90s of a strong awareness in the community sector of the importance of maintaining a certain amount of control over the practice of evaluation. In a context, if you remember, in the context of growing pressure from some governmental funders around impact measurement. So this is a very grassroots movement, actually, initiated by community groups and also by intermediary organizations such as the Centre de Formation Populaire at this time. Their mantra was, evaluation is too important to leave in the hands of our funders, so let's take it over. The movement, this movement accelerated in the years 2000. This is the time when funders such as Centraide Montréal, so the local Montreal United Way, decided to massively support the development of evaluation capacities of nonprofit organizations through coaching and training programs. And at the turn of the 2010s, the acceleration of community development approaches based on local mobilization and integrated multi-sectoral approaches, such as the neighborhood roundtable in Montreal, shifted the reflection on practices at another level. The question was how to build the capacity of an entire community to measure the changes, how to integrate the different stakeholders in this process. So also the experiment of new ways of supporting and funding place-based development strategy, like Avenir d'Enfants or Quebec Informe, supported by the Lucie and André Chagnon Foundation, or the Collective Impact Project in Montreal, came with support for developing participatory evaluation strategies in the communities, with direct funding and capacity building support from intermediary organizations such as Dynamo. So today, to finish today, there is a very, very dense ecosystem of organizations that continues to generate thinking and encourage the practice of participatory evaluation at the scale of communities. Just to name a few, we hear Dynamo today, but there is also Communityled, the Thiès, Territoire Innovant, Économie Sociale et Solidaire, very active in this field. The CASIS, the National School of Public Administration, with the work of Linda Ray too, and a lot of other actors that contribute to continue this reflection about how do we measure impact at the local level.
Thank you so much, Jean-Marie, for providing us with a bit of context and explaining the specificities of Quebec. Yeah, we can clearly see from what you just said, like how rich the ecosystem is to sustain the work or around participatory evaluation. It's very interesting to listen to the three of you from the three different perspectives. I'm really enjoying this. I'd like to open it to all of you now. Can we go to the next slide, please? To share with us, in the context of your work, what does strategic learning mean and why does it matter? In all the three presentations, we see that the purpose of evaluation is strategic learning. So I'd like to dive a little deeper into what it means and why it's important to you. Misha, would you like to go?
So at its core, I would say that strategic learning is identifying what we absolutely need to know in order to affect change. So it's to ask the right questions at the right time to the right people, but also with the right people. And once we know what these questions are, and once we have collected these questions, it's also to ensure that these are going to be used. And thus the importance of a place-based approach.
Thank you.
I can go.
Yeah, sure.
For a neighborhood roundtable and for the community, it's important to know what we have changed to reduce inequalities, to understand what has changed in the district. We do evaluation to understand what have been done, what we are good at, how do we make change happen. We are what we are not good at, what is holding us back, what we need to work on in order to update, prioritize the local issue we want to improve for our strategic planning.
Thank you, Jean-Marie. Would you like to add to this?
Yeah, I really second what Diana and Nisha said. I would say my words that strategic planning, strategic learning to me is a learning process that leads to continuous improvement and that is oriented in decision making, actually. Also, for me, strategic learning is highly connected to the collective and connected to the collective and inclusive dimension of the work. By engaging those directly affected by your project in your evaluation and learning process, you increase the likelihood that the evaluation will be more relevant and responsive to the needs of the community. By implementing a more inclusive evaluation that respects principles of inclusion, equity, and reconciliation, by including people who are usually excluded from decision-making processes at a local level, as well as values or principles that respect the way these people approach and understand their reality, we can generate data and learnings that are more accurate and attuned to reality. Involving a variety of stakeholders in an evaluation process can help also generate a high level of learnings, but also a high level of buy-in and deeper understanding of your initiative. So the diversity of the actors involved allows for a real democratization of the decision-making process and allows for plurality in viewpoints and perspective.
Thank you so much to the three of you for sharing these insights. The three of you are very convincing about the benefits of participatory evaluation, about the benefits of strategic learning, and you've shared some great examples of your work. Now I'd like to get to the crunchy part and learn from your experience. What are some of the challenges that you have encountered with participatory evaluation, but most importantly, how did you address them?
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead, Diana.
That's really easy to feel and get lost in the process and the analysis. Hopefully, that's exactly why you have an external organization with you that is important to guide you. In the CDC Center South, we also work with evaluation committee with whom we do back and forth very often. Within the CDC Center South, we work in pair, but sometimes at different steps when we need it. We bring the subject to the whole team. We can share the point of view. We can share where we are stuck or not. Because we definitely believe that the project of evaluation is something common to all our team and colleagues. We do evaluation within the CDC because we all work actually on the collective action. So from the community standpoint, it's not always easy to mobilize the community in the longer term. It takes time, resources, and energy for the stakeholder to participate to a long-term evaluation process. And convinced that the evaluation is a useful take to time. It's a useful time to take for an organization. It takes time and concrete results. And finally, participatory evaluation means you cannot control everything. You don't have to control everything. You can't arrive with a ready-made approach. You need to readjust your expectations.
Thank you, Diana. That's beautiful. Jean-Marie, would you like to go?
Yeah, participatory evaluation can lead to a lot of challenges. I would say the search for consensus around the evaluation objectives is a big challenge. Having a common vision of what we want to do and what we want to measure. But also you say that Diana, the overall coordination process, which can be overwhelming. But these challenges can be overcome, but it requires a lot of time and collective commitment. In a more technical dimension, I would say that balancing the costs on the energy associated to the participatory dimension, like meetings, consultations, events, polls, retraction loops, balancing this extra cost with the opportunities of having a large amount of contributors on support from contributions on support from stakeholders is also a challenge. You have to find the right path between this extra cost and these advantages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for raising that the financial aspect of evaluation as well. Misha, what would you like to share about obstacles and how you have overcome them?
So a challenge that we often face is that the rate of participation and engagement can vary greatly from collective to collective, because often the people we work with have many responsibilities as part of the role, which means they're unable to prioritize evaluation. So usually these are folks who prioritize being the action, while seemingly theoretical approaches like evaluation can make them feel like they're distancing themselves from the field. The way we address this challenge is by offering them the chance to get more involved at some specific stages of the evaluation process more than others. So as an example, and from my experience, stakeholders in the committee usually enjoy a lot more the step where we're choosing and designing the data collection tools, for example. Another way would be by working with tools like the theory of change that enables us to make more explicit the group's shared vision. So often the project that we work with already have this kind of tool in place, but with time, people finish losing sight of that end goal that Diana mentioned earlier. So as a facilitator, it is always beneficial to redo this exercise with our evaluation committee, even if it's a more express version of it. So this way, everyone can place themselves and the role within the project and develop an interest in evaluation. And finally, another approach is by designing and implementing monitoring tools before moving to evaluation at a more macro level, because this works well in creating that first spark for evaluation, since it's more closely tied to their day-to-day responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Misha. And I see one of our participants in the chat box also added a comment on the question of challenges, saying Marie-France found that community engagement works best at the onset of an initiative or in resetting an initiative. Asking questions about something that is over is less compelling. And I think this comment, thank you for that, Marie-France, really reinforces what you have shared with us, that evaluation is at every stages of the work, right? As you go on with the 3 phases that you showed us, Diana, evaluation is not something you do afterwards when the activity is completed. It's something that you do regularly and that is embedded in the whole process, also to generate learnings and redirect the course of action if it's necessary. Yeah, so as we can see in the chat box, many of our participants are already involved in participatory evaluation initiatives or might be interested in exploring this approach. The 3 of you have been doing that for a long time. So I'd like to ask you, what piece of advice do you have for our participants interested or involved in participatory evaluation?
I can start.
Go ahead.
I would say it's very simple. I would say just be yourself. In our everyday life, we are always doing evaluations. So we know how to set goals with family members, friends, colleagues. We are usually very good at assessing our achievements and learnings from the consequences of our actions. So just be yourself and transpose this mindset to the community. More seriously, I think there are four important mindsets to adopt and maintain in a community when leading successful evaluations. From my experience, the first one indeed is curiosity. Curiosity is the major driver of an evaluative mindset. Asking questions again and again, asking why questions. The second one is an appetite for learning in order to improve what we do and how we do it. The third one, and Diana, you talked about that, it's the flexibility, agility, flexibility. Evaluation is a science based on precise methods, but it is also a form of craft. It's like playing music. One can follow a score and respect precise norms, but you can also create, invent, adjust, improvise, as what you did in the Centre Sud, and it was very successful. As long as you are aware of the limits, the methodological limits of what you are doing. The fourth one is ownership. Evaluation you said that at the beginning also, Diana. Evaluation must be undertaken willingly. We do an evaluation for the best interest of our community and of the people we serve. So we have to be inclusive on that. So apply an equity lens to our evaluation work. Make sure we engage those who have the least chance of having their voices heard. And it contributes to a collective ownership of the evaluation.
Thank you, Jean-Marie. I really like your metaphors. Yeah, we're actually very good at setting goals for ourselves, but also for our family members, doing everyday evaluation. And these mindsets that you just shared, I think really reflect what we've heard so far and what works when we do participatory evaluation. Michel, do you also have a piece of advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have a couple. So take care of your group. Start slowly. Be mindful of their limits. I mentioned earlier about when choosing the evaluation questions to really define what you really need to know, and that is also true when defining the collection tools, data collection tools, to really go with what's sufficient, necessary. We don't want to overburn them. Also, to be careful with the words that we are using when we do evaluation, not only because of the technical terms that we tend to use, but also when we're working with collectives, we have a tendency to use words that are often found in evaluation guides. And an example will be with the term evaluation champions, when this can actually have a contrary effect on people, because what we want is to make evaluation accessible to everyone, and we want everyone to feel like they can do, but that they can add to the conversation, rather than to divide the group among, I don't know, better people suited for the evaluation than others.
Experts.
Exactly. So another piece of advice is do not underestimate the power of a collaboration agreement with your evaluation committee at the beginning of the process. And what I mean by this is for everyone to be able to name their expectations, their needs, and their roles at the very beginning and throughout the project, because this helps everyone to stay engaged in the project in the long term.
Well, thank you very much to all of you for sharing these very valuable pieces of advice. I have a last question before we turn on to our participants' question. And it's about the ingredients for success to sustain this work. It might be easy to mobilize the community at first and create enthusiasm with, as you mentioned, Misha, with designing the data collection tools and so on. And there's also a sense of urgency when you start the work, but then over time it can decline. So what are some of the ingredients that you've experienced that help sustain this work?
I can start.
Mhm.
So within the CDC Center South, I would say the support of our manager. We have the chance to be a learning organization and to have the freedom to explore, experiment, and be flexible in our process. And this type of organizational culture is an essential condition to implement an evaluation process in a district. And definitely the support of an external expert organization. Through those 3 years, Dynamo helped us a lot to improve our capacity and build our own trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the process, trust in the stakeholders is a key point to have fun in the measuring changes in the community.
Great. Who would like to go?
I can go. I would say one ingredient is to. It's not an ingredient. It's more a posture, a state of mind, another state of mind. It's trying to reduce anxiety around the evaluation in the communities. So evaluation is fun. Evaluation can be easy. It's complicated, but it can be easy to handle. And it brings a lot of insights on, that are really helpful. So we shouldn't be anxious about working on evaluation. And sometimes the theoretical dimension of evaluation can be a little bit daunting. So it's something that we can overcome, or we can help people to overcome. There is also, I may answer Gillian's question, a systemic ingredient, I would say, and this is what we have done in Quebec. It's to animate the conversation between a lot of actors that are interested in evaluation. So doing community of practices, for example, with people who are helping communities to work on evaluation, including communities also. I would say, and it will answer Aile's question, find a good external resources to support your process. You will need to decide which external resource you will use and how you will work with them. You are not working with external evaluators that are going to do the job for you. In a participatory evaluation, you work differently with evaluators or researchers or specialists of evaluation and learning. So you can work with external evaluators, but you will need to re-clarify the role you want them to take. They can help you to structure your strategy. They can help you to coach your evaluation committee, coach your stakeholders, like what Dynamo does. They can provide feedback and advice on your methodological choices, and also they can train your community and your stakeholders to evaluate. So their role is different, and you choose them in function of the role that you want them to play. The specific point about capacity building and training is actually another ingredient. Maintaining capacities and skills in the community. Participatory evaluation requires a specific attention to training and capacity building and to the pedagogical dimension of your process. So maintaining a level of evaluation skills in the community is essential. And we all know that there is a lot of turnover in the communities, and it's very important to keep the skills alive in the community. Last ingredient, if we have the time, just dedicating a space, real or virtual, in a community to evaluation. In order to make your community evaluation strategy tangible, you can consider the possibility of dedicating a space to evaluation, kind of storefront open to the community where you can organize meetings and data collection activities and display the work of the evaluation process. Can be particularly useful and unifying. But I understand that now with the pandemic, it's better to do that virtually. But but having an evaluation space in the community can be a very helpful ingredient.
Thank you, Jean-Marie, for those ingredients and also for starting to answer our participants' question while sharing this. I'd like to give you, Misha, the chance of a few last words on the ingredients for success, and then we'll turn on to our participants.
Yeah, so I'll make this short and delicious. It's like the ingredients are like a poutine. So
Poutine. Wow.
Yes, like a poutine. So if the fries will be that collaboration agreement I was talking about earlier, the cheese curds would be the goodwill, the gravy would be the trust, and the extra spice would be to add that to add creativity to the process, to be creative, to go as much as out of the box as you can with to make it as fun as possible.
Well, that was very Quebec specific, the poutine recipe. Thank you for sharing this with us. We'll have to stop there because I have a few announcements. I'd like to thank all our participants for these great questions, and the 3 speakers. You did a wonderful job. Thank you very much for making the effort as well of speaking English. We really appreciate this. I would like to invite our participants to our next webinar on place-based philanthropy for citywide change on November 10. Then we have the last one of the series on December 9th for this year is on place-based social innovation through living labs. So both are part of the place-based Quebec work that we are profiling. I also invite you, if you missed the first webinar on the roundtables in Montreal and you'd be interested, we'll also link it in the follow-up email. Then next, please. We also have 2 upcoming workshops on participatory evaluation. If you want a deep dive into the theory and practice of community-based assessment and strategic learning practices, the English workshop will take place on November 17, and we're very glad to offer Évaluation participative in French as well. So my colleague Jean-Marie will be leading that on November 25. So once again, thank you very much to our 3 speakers. You did a wonderful job today. That was an amazing, looking glass into the work of Quebec. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you, Miriam. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a very good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.